Hey everyone, I'm Avery, and I really need some advice on how I handled things. But first, let me give you some context so you understand why I did what I did. I'm 23 years old, and I've always had to fight for everything. I never got the luxury of handouts, not even from my own family. Growing up, it was clear that I was the invisible kid in the family, the one who was always expected to be perfect, yet always left to fend for myself. My younger brother, Jason, on the other hand, could do no wrong. He's 20 now, but back when we were growing up, he was always the center of attention. He was the one who got the new clothes, the latest gadgets, the trips. He was the golden child. I, on the other hand, had to grind just to get by. And that's fine. I'm not bitter about it. Okay, maybe I am a little, but I always thought I'd earn their respect. But things really started to shift when Jason crossed a line that I honestly didn't think was possible. I'd never been financially irresponsible. I've always been careful with money, always made sure my credit was in check, because I knew the consequences of not doing so. I even had a side hustle, helping people with their resumes, and put a decent amount of effort into keeping myself afloat. I wasn't swimming in cash, but I managed. Jason? Not so much. He has always relied on my parents for everything. They paid for his car, his college tuition, all of his expenses. Even when he was in high school, if he wanted something, my parents got it for him. He never had to worry about money, he had it easy. And I had to watch all of it happen while I was the one doing the hard work, never receiving the same kind of support. But this was a whole different level. It all started about 3 months ago. It was a Saturday night, and I was sitting in my bedroom after a long day. I'd just gotten home from a 12-hour shift at my part-time job, and I was about to wind down for the night. I usually check my finances before bed, just a habit of mine, nothing special, but that night, I noticed something strange. I pulled up my bank account, expecting to see the usual numbers. I was in the middle of budgeting, figuring out how to pay off the last few bills for the month. But then my stomach dropped. I saw multiple charges, totaling over $5,000, across several credit cards. Some of them were from places I'd never heard of, others from restaurants and shops that I definitely hadn't visited. In a panic, I began scrolling through the transactions, trying to make sense of it. Hotel bookings, a couple of online shopping sprees, even a high-end restaurant in another state. There was no way I could have been there. No way I could have bought those things. I froze for a second, trying to process what I was looking at. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks. My brother, Jason. Jason had somehow gotten his hands on my credit card details. I immediately texted him. I couldn't wait until morning. I needed answers now. My fingers were shaking as I typed out the message. Jason, why are there charges on my credit cards that I didn't make? Are you seriously using my cards? A few minutes went by before he responded. His reply was classic Jason, casual, dismissive. What are you talking about? I haven't used your cards. Maybe you're just losing track of your own spending. I felt a flash of rage. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. Instead, I dug deeper into my bank app and found that all of these charges were coming from accounts and places that Jason had access to, like his online shopping account, which I'd found him using before, and even his buddy's hotel reservation. It didn't take long to connect the dots. I knew, without a doubt, that Jason had stolen my credit card info and used it for himself. And not just once, he had been using it repeatedly. The next morning, I went straight to him. Jason was lounging on the couch in the living room, gaming as usual. He barely even looked up when I entered. I stormed up to him, holding my phone in front of his face, showing him the mountain of charges. Jason, I said, voice shaking with anger, explain this. Why are there $5,000 in charges on my credit cards from places you've been? Did you steal my card info? He paused the game, his eyes widening for just a split second, just enough for me to catch the guilty look before he shifted back to his usual cocky grin. What? Me? Nah, that wasn't me. You probably just didn't notice your own spending, Avery, he said with a shrug, trying to act casual. I was fuming. I felt my fist clench. Cut the crap. This is fraud. I'm reporting it. Whoa, calm down, he said, leaning back on the couch with an exaggerated sigh. I didn't do anything. Why are you always trying to make me look bad? He barely even cared. He wasn't even trying to pretend like he was sorry. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't the first time he had done something like this. He'd always gotten away with things in the past, and now he was testing the waters again. This time, though, he had crossed a line. The tension between us continued to build after that. That evening, after I'd reported the fraudulent charges to my bank, I got a call from my parents. They told me to come over and talk. I figured they might be on my side. After all, I was the victim in this situation, right? Wrong. When I walked into the living room, they were sitting there with disappointed looks on their faces, as if I'd done something wrong. Son, my mom started, her voice unusually calm. We need to talk about the credit card situation. I immediately got defensive. I've already reported it to the bank. Jason used my cards, and I'm not going to just pay off the charges. That's the thing, though, my dad chimed in. Jason is going through a rough time, and you need to help him out. I stared at them, my jaw hanging open in disbelief. What? Help him out? I'm the one who's been scammed. Family comes first, Avery, my mom said, her tone growing colder. You need to keep the peace and just pay it off. Jason's going through a phase, and we're asking you to help him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were blaming me for not helping him, like I was the one who had stolen from them. And that's when they hit me with the ultimatum. If you don't pay this off, my dad said, his voice like ice, you're cut off. No more family support. No more help with anything. For a moment, I stood there, just stunned. They were giving me an ultimatum over Jason's fraud. I was beyond angry. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was about respect. It was about self-respect. And that's when I made my decision. Enjoy your lying, son, I said, turning away from them, voice shaking with rage. I'm done. And I walked out of their house. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I stepped out of the house, slamming the door behind me. The sound of it echoed in my ears, and for a split second, I felt this strange sense of liberation. It was like I was free from their hold, finally breaking away from the toxic cycle they created. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a bitter, gnawing anger. I didn't want to just walk away. I wanted them to understand how wrong they were. I wanted them to see just how far Jason had pushed me, just how much they had ignored my boundaries for years. But as I walked away from their front door, I knew there was no going back. I tried to keep my head high, but with each step, the weight of what had just happened started to sink in. My parents weren't just dismissing the fraud they'd enabled, they were actively siding with Jason, the person who had betrayed me. I couldn't believe how quickly they'd turned on me, how easily they were willing to discard me just to protect their perfect little son. The same son who had stolen from me and lied straight to my face. I couldn't understand how they didn't see that. The next few days were a blur. I spent most of my time at home, just staring at my phone, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I really just cut all ties with them? Or should I try to reach out and make them see reason? But as the days passed, and I didn't hear a word from my parents, it became clear they weren't going to reach out to me. They were going to let Jason slide, and they'd just ignore me until I fell in line. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even want to speak to them anymore. It wasn't just the betrayal with the credit cards, it was everything. The way they had always prioritized Jason over me. The way they never even gave me a chance to voice my frustrations. I felt like I had spent my entire life being invisible to them, and now they were finally showing me exactly how little I mattered. But the anger that burned inside me wasn't going to just fizzle out. I spent the next few nights planning. I wasn't just going to walk away and leave it at that. No, I had to hit them where it hurt. I had to make sure Jason understood that there were consequences for his actions. I thought about reporting the fraud to the authorities, about taking legal action. But as I sat there, something else hit me. Jason had been getting away with things for too long, thanks to my parents always bailing him out. It wasn't just about the money. It was about teaching him a lesson, about showing him that there was a price to pay for being a manipulative, deceitful person. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the best revenge wasn't going to be some petty revenge over a few $1,000s. No, my revenge would be exposing him for what he truly was, someone who couldn't even take responsibility for his own mistakes. That's when the idea came to me. If my parents were going to turn a blind eye to everything, then I'd make sure they couldn't avoid the truth. I knew that Jason's reputation wasn't exactly spotless. He had a few skeletons in his closet. Everyone did, I suppose, but Jason's were a bit more public. There were rumors about him borrowing money from people and never paying it back. Stories about how he'd tricked people into doing things for him. Nothing that was technically illegal, but enough to paint him as a shady character. And I knew one thing. If I could get all those stories together, it would force my parents to confront the reality of who their precious son really was. I started reaching out to people Jason had wronged in the past, people I'd known from high school or from his old social circle. It didn't take long for me to find a few that were willing to talk. Some of them were still angry with Jason for how he'd manipulated them or used them, and they were more than happy to share their experiences. It felt a little dirty, digging up all this stuff, but I was doing it for one reason, to make my parents understand that they couldn't just let him walk all over me and them. Meanwhile, Jason was living life like nothing had changed. He was still posting on social media like nothing was wrong. He had his usual group of friends around him, partying and playing video games, acting like he hadn't just destroyed his relationship with me. I was watching all of this from the sidelines, and with each post, each story he shared, I could feel the anger simmering more. He was living his best life, with zero consequences, while I was left to clean up the mess he'd made. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I knew that if I could just get my parents to see what kind of person he really was, things would change. If I could just make them see that their son wasn't the innocent little angel they always thought he was, maybe they'd stop enabling him. Then, one evening, everything came to a head. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, when I saw a message from my mom. It was short and to the point. "We need to talk. Can you come over?" My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from them in days, and the fact that my mom was reaching out made me feel a little hopeful, like maybe they were starting to see things from my perspective. But as soon as I got to their house, that hope was shattered. Jason was sitting there, on the couch, looking smug as ever. He didn't even look up when I walked in. My mom and dad were sitting across from him, and as soon as I sat down, my mom's face was full of that same cold disappointment. "Avery," my dad started, his tone clipped, "we've talked about this. You need to stop dragging our family through the mud. You're the one causing the problems, not Jason." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was their response? This was what they had to say after everything? I stood up, the anger rising in me again. "You have no idea what you're talking about," I snapped. "You're defending someone who's stolen from me, lied to me, and used me. And now, you're blaming me for the problems?" Jason just smirked. "You're just mad because I'm doing better than you, Avery. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with everything being perfect, you'd understand that family has to stick together." That was it. Jason's smug grin was enough to make my blood boil. I could feel my fist clenching, my entire body vibrating with frustration. But I wasn't going to let him get the last word. Not this time. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The anger was almost suffocating, but I had to stay calm. I had to make them see, really see, just how wrong they were. "You think I'm mad because you're doing better than me?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You really believe that?" Jason's grin faltered, but only for a moment. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but there was still that air of superiority hanging around him. He thought he was untouchable, that he had one. But I wasn't done yet. "No, Jason. I'm mad because you used me," I continued, taking a step closer to him. "You took advantage of me, and you didn't even blink an eye when you did it. You stole from me, my money, my future, and now you're sitting there pretending you're some kind of victim. But you know what?" I paused, glaring at my parents, their faces blank with disbelief. "I'm not the one who's been selfish, Jason. That's you. And if you think I'm going to sit back and let you get away with it, just because you're family, then you're sorely mistaken." The room fell silent. My parents looked like they were trying to process what I was saying, but I could see it in their eyes. They still didn't get it. They were still on Jason's side, still choosing him over me. They didn't care that he'd ruined my credit, lied about the charges, or left me to clean up his mess. All they cared about was maintaining the illusion that he was the golden child. "Well, I'm done," I said, my voice cold now. "I'm done being your scapegoat. Done being the one who always has to fix everything, while you both coddle him and let him get away with murder." Jason snorted, clearly unbothered. "You're just bitter because mom and dad love me more." He leaned back in his chair, completely oblivious to the depth of the hurt he was causing. And that did it. That was the last straw. I leaned in, my face inches from his, and for the first time in years, I let him see just how much I hated him in that moment. "You want to talk about love, Jason?" I whispered, every word dripping with venom. "Let me tell you something. Mom and dad may love you, but it's not because of who you are, it's because they've enabled every damn thing you've ever done. They've supported you in every lie, every manipulation, and they've turned a blind eye to everything you've done to hurt me. You're not loved because of who you are, Jason. You're loved because they don't want to face the fact that they've failed as parents. And that's something you'll never understand. You're so busy playing the victim that you can't even see how much you've taken from me." For a moment, it felt like I had hit him with a gut punch. His eyes widened, and he looked like he was about to say something, but then, my dad spoke up, his voice sharp and defensive. "Avery, that's enough," he snapped. "You're out of line. This isn't how we talk about family." I shook my head. "No, this is exactly how we need to talk about family. The truth isn't pretty, but it's the truth. And if you can't handle it, then maybe you need to stop pretending everything is fine when it's falling apart. My mom looked at me with that same cold, distant gaze, and I could tell she was on the verge of defending Jason again. But before she could speak, I held up a hand, cutting her off. You want to know what's been bothering me all these years? I continued, my voice unwavering. It's not just the money or the fact that Jason's ruined my life with his lies. It's that you two have always chosen him over me. Always. And I've had enough of it. Maybe I don't fit into your idea of a perfect family, but I'm not going to keep pretending I do. You'll never understand the toll it's taken on me. You'll never get it, because you're too busy making excuses for him. I could feel the weight of those words hanging in the air. I wasn't just confronting them about the money. I was confronting everything, their neglect, their favoritism, their blind loyalty to Jason. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care if they were angry at me. Jason's smug grin had finally faded, replaced by a look of pure irritation. You think this is about me? This is about you, Avery. You're just bitter because you're a failure. You couldn't get things together like I did. So now you're trying to make everyone else the bad guy, so you don't have to face your own shortcomings. I could feel my hands shaking. The words hurt, but I wasn't going to let him get away with them. I didn't fail, Jason, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. But you will. You're so busy playing the victim that you'll never realize you've burned every bridge you've ever had. And trust me, I'm done trying to save you. My dad stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. Avery, stop it. This needs to end right now. You're being dramatic, and you need to respect your family. You've gone too far. I laughed bitterly. Respect? You want respect? Then start respecting me. Start treating me like I matter. For a moment, there was silence. I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Jason wasn't smirking anymore. My parents weren't defending him. It was like the tension in the room was so thick that it could cut through the walls. But then, just as I was about to speak again, Jason sneered. Whatever. It doesn't matter. You'll come crawling back. You always do. I stood there, frozen, every muscle in my body screaming at me to walk away, to leave this behind. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I looked at Jason one last time, shaking my head in disbelief. I won't come crawling back, Jason. I'm done. And trust me, you'll regret it. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out of their house for what I hoped would be the last time. It's been a few months now, and I've had more time to reflect on everything that happened. My life has slowly started to get back to normal, even better in some ways. But as for my family, well, let's just say that karma's a real thing, and it doesn't forget. The first thing I did after walking out of their house was get in touch with the credit card companies. I reported the fraud, explained what had happened, and froze all the accounts that Jason had somehow gotten his hands on. They were understanding, and I was able to clear my name. My credit score took a hit, but nothing like what it could have been if I hadn't acted so quickly. I was still angry, but more than that, I felt relieved. Like a weight had been lifted off me. What happened next? Well, it was a slow burn for Jason and my parents. First, Jason's little act of playing the victim didn't last long. He had his shiny job, his perfect life, and his constant posts about his success on social media, his typical ego boost. But then, out of nowhere, his job started crumbling. They downsized, and guess who got laid off? That's right, Jason. No more cushy paycheck. No more free ride. What followed was even worse. It wasn't just the job loss, it was the lifestyle crash. Jason's expensive habits caught up with him. He was drowning in debt, and there was no way he could keep up with it. He tried asking my parents for help, but they were tired of bailing him out. They had been helping him for years, and now they were facing their own financial issues, mostly because they kept running up their own credit cards to keep Jason happy. It wasn't just the money, either. My parents started fighting more. The constant pressure to support Jason was slowly eating away at them. The bills piled up, arguments turned into shouting matches, and the strain was obvious. They couldn't even keep up the facade of the perfect family anymore. I wasn't going to rub it in, but I couldn't help feeling a little satisfied watching their world implode. Maybe it was petty of me, but after everything I'd been through, I felt like they finally got a taste of the consequences of enabling Jason. As for me, well, I did a lot of growing during those months. I took control of my life, my finances, and most importantly, I stopped feeling like I owed them anything. I finally started getting some good opportunities at work, and I was able to move into a better apartment on my own, something I had always dreamed of but never thought I could afford. And then, the moment of revenge finally came. It wasn't dramatic or over the top. It wasn't some big public blowout. It was just simple, quiet, and perfectly fitting. I got a call from a family friend who had somehow managed to stay in touch with my parents, even though I had completely cut them off. Turns out, Jason had tried to reach out to them for help again, but this time he was asking for more than money. He was asking them to co-sign a loan for him. He needed a big lump sum to pay off his mounting debt. My parents, after everything, said no. But here's the kicker. They were so desperate to keep Jason from spiraling that they started blaming me. They said, Avery should have stepped in. She should have helped him. As if after everything they'd done to me, I was supposed to play the role of the savior, the one who rescued Jason from the consequences of his own actions. I found out through the family friend that Jason had actually tried to turn the whole thing into a sob story, telling people that I was heartless for not helping him after everything he had done for me. Of course, that was the narrative he was spinning, and for a while, it seemed like he was getting away with it. But then, the best part came. A few weeks after their latest request for me to bail Jason out, I got a message from my parents. It was brief, just a simple text, asking if I was willing to meet up. They said they wanted to work things out. I couldn't help but laugh. I didn't respond. I had no intention of going back, of giving them another chance to disappoint me. But I knew that I had one. Jason was alone. My parents were scrambling. They could no longer protect him from his own actions. And I had finally let go of the toxic relationship that had kept me stuck for years. I'm not proud of enjoying this, but I can't lie. It felt good to see them face the reality of their choices. Maybe it wasn't the kind of revenge I had imagined at first, but it was enough. Jason learned the hard way that no amount of family favoritism could save him from his own downfall. As for me, I finally learned that I don't need them. I found peace in moving on. I'm done trying to please people who will never appreciate me. And I'm done fixing the messes that they've made for me. If they want to keep playing the game of family loyalty, they'll have to do it without me. Because in the end, family doesn't come first. Not when it costs you everything to be there.